Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band podcast. I'm your host, Benedikt. If you're new to the show, welcome. If you are already a listener, welcome back. Stoked to have you. If you discovered this on YouTube, please know that this is an audio podcast as well, so you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the platforms, wherever you consume podcasts. So I just have to say that because some people are not aware of that, and vice versa. There's also a video version of that. Now, today, I got a very special episode. It's not Malcolm and myself, as usual. I got a guest today, and the guest is Warren Huart. You might know Warren because, there's many things, many reasons to know Warren. Like, he's worked with bands like Aerosmith, Frehley, the Fray, Ramones, James Blunt, Colbie Caillat. The list goes on. And you might also know him from his work with Produce Like a Pro or Pro Mix Academy. These are platforms that Warren founded, and these incredible resources for people who want to learn how to record and mix music. So I'm beyond excited to have him on the show today, and I'm very, very thankful that you took the time to do this. So welcome, Warren Huart, to the show.
Benedikt, you are very, very kind. I'm just another guy doing what we do, making music, recording music. Yeah. Very, very blessed to be able to do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, we appreciate it. The community
I even put on a jacket
look forward
for
to
you.
this. Oh, yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's...
I've just been speaking at a school, actually. I just did a couple of speaking events at a school. Just kind of the industry, how to sort of navigate it and make money and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
All right. Good. You're the first person to put on a jacket for our show, so I appreciate that.
Oh, there you go. I feel so special.
Awesome, man. So we got a ton of questions from our community because they were excited for this episode, but we'll get to those later. We'll get to those later. Great questions. Before we do that, I don't really think we need to do like the whole backstory kind of thing because honestly, our community, most people will probably know a little bit about you. But still, is there one thing that most people don't know or people never ask on interviews, like one backstory sort of thing that is like not the obvious stuff?
Exactly. And there is actually, and something I only really started thinking about. So, I talk often about being 16 and leaving home. I left home at 16. I joined a band doing like funk covers and other kind of stuff. I always joke that Nile Rodgers gave me my career because I learned all the Sister Sledge and Chic songs, and huge Nile Rodgers fan. Yet to interview him. So Nile, if you're listening, I really want to interview you. So people know that I talk about that. So I was a professional musician right from the age of 16, and I always talk about how I was the annoying guy in the band that when we were making records would tap the engineer on the shoulder and ask silly questions, and that I always did the demos for my bands and did use 4-track and 8-track and ADATs and then DAWs, etc. So I talk about all that stuff. What I often forget to mention is that I used to DJ.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I DJ'd, and I did dance music as well.
Wow.
I just didn't get particularly successful at it. But when I came to America in the mid-90s, I actually got gigs doing hair conferences, like DJing and playing like British dance music before dance music really happened out here. European dance music, as you know, which had been, around forever. To be honest, being German, being Deutsch, that. Germany, Deutschland was one of the first countries in the world to really embrace electronic music. You've got Tangerine Dream and Kraftwerk and Neu and, all these incredible bands. And, the British music of the late 70s, Depeche Mode and Joy Division, of course, New Order, all stole lovingly, but stole from bands like Neu. Neu, for instance. The intro to Love Will Tear Us Apart is very, very close to a Neu song. I actually was just speaking at a school, and we were talking about origins of music, and we were talking about how to look back and make sure that you have really good taste and listen to stuff. And I used an example of New Wave in Britain was essentially disco and German synth pop. I mean, that's Depeche Mode, that's New Order. It's German synth pop with disco, and even some of the disco stuff that people don't realize actually has its origins in Deutschland, in Germany, because of course, I Feel Love was recorded in Berlin, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so which is one of the most seminal, one of the most important songs of all time. I mean, there's a very famous story of Eno hearing Donna Summer for the first time and calling David Bowie and saying, "This is the future of music." Hence why Bowie and Iggy and all those guys moved to Berlin and lived there and recorded, Heroes very famously, of course, at Hansa. Where we've been and recorded and did a masterclass and also did a studio tour. So I've always had a very, very incredibly strong affinity for Germany. I actually went to Berlin when I was 17, and it was just before the wall came down. Oh, and we had to. You got on a train, and the guards would change when you get into East Germany, and the guards would come on, and they'd have their Kalashnikovs, and they would get your passport, and they'd hold it up to your face like this, and they would lean in, and so the muzzle would be like right here, like full kind of intimidation. Pretty crazy. But once you got into Berlin, it was like crazy. If you meet anybody, I don't know if you have family or friends that lived in Berlin in the late 80s. They'll tell you it was insane, absolutely crazy city.
I don't, but I heard stories like that from people. So yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, and to this day, it's still one of the best music cities in the world.
Oh, it is, for sure. Yeah. It is. Yeah. Actually, many people, it's a kind of a thing. Many of my friends, people from where I live in a pretty remote area in Bavaria, where it's the opposite of like a music city. And many people, many of my friends moved to Berlin just because of that, especially like in the people in the electronic music world. But Berlin is sort of the destination in Germany for people like that.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
And Superbooth is so much fun. If people, I know we're here, obviously Studio Zane is coming up where we'll be speaking.
Yeah.
But if you're into electronic music, you have to go to Superbooth. It is so much fun.
Awesome, man. I mean, I didn't expect all of that, but that's super interesting. Most of all because I always thought of you as like the rock producer mainly. I didn't even know like the whole electronic sort of background, and that everything you just said, like that was actually new to me. And I would have honestly, I would have asked a question about other genres, and since you've interviewed Jason Joshua on your show, I think, and you're going to do a panel with him at Studio Scene event. And so I was actually going to ask about your, how much, experience or work you've done in other genres, and what else besides rock you actually like, and all of that. But what you just said there answers that question. You do a lot more than just rock. So, yeah,
I feel blessed, because because of those experiences growing up, playing in a funk band. And doing covers. I don't know if there's the opportunity now, because when I was a teenager, there was still, it wasn't as good as it was in the 60s and 70s, but it was still the 80s when I was a teenager and early 90s. Be a lot of clubs and pubs that you could go in and you could just play covers music. So you could, and that was amazing. And it's a great way as a musician to develop your ear to play other people's songs. Learn those songs, sing harmonies. Not that I was very good at singing, that was the last resort with the harmonies. But it's a good way to sort of learn production chops, because you get inside of a song and you have to take maybe your 3 or 4 piece band and make them sound like a full production. So I think that's a real baptism of fire. If you get an opportunity as a producer and you play instruments, I mean, it's pretty awesome to get out there and do that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Which is a great segue into another question that I had. I was following Produce Like a Pro almost since the beginning, I'd say, basically. It was one of the main things that I used to learn from and that I still do. And so I enjoyed, and also just the interviews with people you do there and like the behind the scenes stuff. I just always enjoyed that. And one thing that I admired a lot was you were such a great guitar player and such a great musician, not just producer, engineer.
Thank you.
And I was always, and so, yeah, absolutely, it's true. And what I was always wondering is, how is it possible to find the time to get like so good on an instrument, but also be like a busy producer and engineer and be good at that, and then build, Produce Like a Pro and all of that? I'm just asking because a lot of people can play instruments when they're producers, but you are really, really good. And that takes practice, obviously. So how do you do that? Because I struggle with that a lot.
Well, I think I'm looking around at a guitar. Well, looking around for a guitar, because for me, when I was a kid, when I was like 16 years old and first started playing, I learned a little later, but I had a baptism of fire. I moved to the north of England, and in the north where all the clubs, where there was still like lots of clubs to play, I befriended a guy called Ollie Alcock, who was this kind of local hero in a town called Carlisle. And he just kind of showed me things. Not only did he show me things that got my playing better, but one of the things he did was impart really good taste. I love talking about this. Ollie said to me, he goes, if you want to be a great rhythm guitar player, like pop rock rhythm guitar player, listen to John Lennon. John Lennon was one of the tightest, best feel acoustic, rhythm guitar players. So I listened and learned a lot of Beatles songs. Then he said to me, if you want to play with feel and a little bit of left of center, listen to Jeff Beck. Listen to how he can just kind of like play. Now you're making. Eric went and got me a guitar. See.
Oh wow, awesome.
Thank you, Eric. So he said, listen to Jeff Beck, and then he said for vibrato and feel, Paul Kossoff, just a kind of, that kind of.
Yeah.
And so what it imparted a lot of like, and then legato, left hand technique. All that stuff was Alan Holdsworth. Yeah. And then he said, you want to get your right hand together? Two guys, Aldo Meola, all that kind of stuff. Aldo Meola, actually it was mainly Aldo Meola that he was pushing me towards. So the point is like, he gave me a great lesson in listening to incredible musicians. And that was a wonderful, wonderful thing. And so I got to be a pretty good guitar player early on in my career. So when I started producing and engineering, and I was always that guy that would always be recording my own bands that I was in. But when I got to that stage, guitar playing was kind of in my blood. And when I'm working, I always have a guitar on me because I want to know the song. And I'm lazy. I don't chart. I've never charted a song in my life. But if it's recording and the band's playing, I've already worked out the rhythm part, the lead part. I'll have got the baby, if that's the vocal melody, I've already done it. So I'll already know it's. I'll know what the harmony is. So to me, a guitar is an extension of it's a tool of my trade. So when we come to do the harmonies, I'll already know that it's going to be. I'll know the harmony I want on that part. If I have to put down a part, replay the bass line or the electric, rhythm part or whatever it is, or acoustic or whatever it is, it's already in my brain. So to me, a guitar is part of what I do. And so that's enabled me to keep, even though I don't sit there 8 hours a day anymore, doing all these kinds of exercises, it's just kind of imparted in me. And I've learned through the years, for anybody who's interested in guitar playing stuff, is if I'm only going to play for half an hour or 20 minutes a day, to just concentrate on doing strength and articulation exercises, rather than picking up a guitar and going, I'll go. So this will be like 20 minutes of just kind of like playing these chromatic runs and stuff like that with alternating picking and stuff like that. And also building in stretch exercises. Yeah. So this is maybe, if all I play guitar today, that's probably all I'll do. So that kind of answers it. So even though I'm not playing that much as I would want, I'm concentrating on only doing it. There's a lot of people talking about that. Scott Devine, the bass player, he did a really good video recently. He's a good friend. I haven't spoken to him in a while. So Scott, if you're watching, hello. And he did a thing about not noodling. It's fun to noodle, but if you can only play for a few minutes a day, make sure you're doing something that keeps your articulation together. And I think that's very important. So I hope that's a long answer, but that's pretty much what I would suggest. If you want to keep your playing up, just make sure you're doing things that challenge you. So, complicated kind of patterns on picking and right hands, and your left hand at the same time with some stretch exercises in it. It means that when I do have to play, I can just pick it up and I can warm up pretty quickly.
Awesome, man. That was such a good answer. I was hoping for that. That's unfortunately probably stuff that people don't want to hear. That they have to do this because a lot of people love to noodle, but it's the truth. It's you got to use the time effectively that you have, and I'm going to take that to heart too because I've always played instruments, but I struggle when I'm like mixing all the time and like doing all kinds of things. I sometimes don't play an instrument in like days, and it's hard to stay good at or to get better. But probably just do the right things when you play. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the two things I'll do if I'm only playing for 20 minutes are the chromatic runs with the stretches and the alternating picking. And then things like arpeggios. I just do this open string. Just playing sevenths.
Yeah.
And with open strings, it's actually always a little bit harder than when you're playing. You can do the big kind of ones like that. Actually, it's far easier than playing. So then I'm practicing multiple things. I'm doing chromatic runs with stretches for my fingers, alternating picking on the right hand with string skipping, and then really big wide kind of movements for my right hand on arpeggios. So I pretty much covered the bases. I suppose the only other thing I could do would probably be to do one of those kind of Joe Pass kind of exercises where he just to kind of keep your right hand rhythm playing and chordal shapes. I think if I was to incorporate that into my practice routine, probably in 20 minutes, I could probably focus as much as I would for noodling for like 2 or 3 hours.
Wow. Thank you so much, man. That's super helpful. And also, I think, I don't know if you agree, but maybe some people should focus on, actually spend more time on the playing than like on the technical side of things. I have the impression, I mean, there's very amazing musicians these days as well, of course, but sometimes I get the impression that a lot of people focus so much on the production side of things now because it's so available and it's, they spend a lot of time in front of the computer when sometimes their records might actually benefit from just better playing or, tighter playing, better writing, better arrangements, that sort of thing, because I think that is still the most important thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think ultimately, as a producer and a musician, I mean, the song comes first. And so how do you support the song? And like I said, for me, it's like I'm in the song, I'm playing along. I'm if whatever's going on, I'm usually sitting there. Whatever the chord sequence is, I'm playing along. I've probably coming up with guitar line ideas, that are working alongside of it. I'm thinking of things. I just like to be inspired. And I suppose, honestly, guys and girls, I love music. So any opportunity I can do to be involved in the song and the production that's left of center and interesting. This is not just like some boring job where I sit there and go, I suppose we have to make the record now. It's just, if that's where you get to in life, do something else. You should never do music to make money. It should be you make money as a consequence. Now, obviously, you need smart business acumen and stuff to do that, and as much as you possibly can. And it's difficult in an industry that's dominated by people being very loud. I mean, this presumably is going to be on YouTube. It's like 99.99% of the people that do YouTube and have recording channels have never actually recorded, or they just so record just to sell courses on things, and it's tough. It's a very weird kind of dynamic. That being good on camera is the most important thing for a YouTube channel. But actual proper knowledge and skills and success in your industry is not that important. And I think that as long as you're doing it because you love it, you're going to do okay. You're going to do okay. Yeah. And I really do think that. And I have so many examples of people that are successful that don't fit in any stereotypes. And I think I have more of those than the ones that fit in the stereotypes.
That's true. That's so true. What do you think, like for the self-recording bands? I mean, we call it the Self-Recording Band Podcast, so this is for people who record themselves. And what do you think is the biggest difference, or is there maybe one thing that people should keep in mind that is different from when you like produce your own record and you mix your own songs versus working with a producer, going to a studio and get your songs produced there? Like, is there one thing that's a big difference in mindset or in the approach, or one thing to be aware of, a pitfall, like the number one thing sort of?
I think I'll speak from my specific experience about recording myself, which we haven't done enough of recently, Eric, have we? We haven't done. I think there was a period about 3 or 4 years ago where I would have Eric open up a session and I would come up with some cool guitar riff and a song idea and we'd put it down. We haven't done that in a while. We tend to record stuff now specifically for a demo of a piece of equipment, which is actually quite fun, to be honest. I get to play guitar and stuff on things like that. I love all of that. So here's an example. So when I play guitar, if I'm behind or on top, I think I'm out of time. If you were playing guitar on the track and you were playing behind, I might think you've got really good feel. So that is one of the things that you have to do, is you have to cut yourself some slack. And when you're recording yourself, don't be so anal about it. Because I will edit myself tighter than I would edit you. So one of the ways around that for me, because I am a good guitar player, so I have to cut myself some slack and I have to let my stuff be a little rawer than I think it should be. Because I would, if it was somebody else, I'd let it go. But on me, it's like, oh no, I'm out of time, And so cut yourself some slack, give yourself an opportunity to just kind of like, be a little bit on top, a little bit behind. Hear that in yourself that you can't hear in others, which is very, very difficult. That's the advantage of having a producer, because a producer will say, no, that was a great take. But when you listen to yourself, all you hear is like timing issues or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's so true. Thank you for that. And where's the line, though? How do you learn that? Because one actually very common question that we get all the time from our students and subscribers and listeners is, how do I know, like, when it's tight enough, or when it's not tight enough? Like, where's the line? How do I learn that? Because they have a hard time doing that sometimes. Yeah,
work fast. Work fast. If you're working fast, you get the idea and the inspiration down. That's more important than anything else. And I don't mean work fast like ignore it when you made a mistake. I don't mean that. Just don't be ridiculously anal about everything and go through everything 1,000 times. Just work fast, get the ideas down, and then later you can come back and go, okay, I can improve this or I can improve that. But so many times, I remember when I did a song with Andrew Frampton and a band called Vedera, and I had this guitar part that I'd come up with, and it was really basic. It was just this descending line, and I had this line, just very simple, going so, down, and I had done it on it was a Canadian guitar. It might have been like a Seagull that had a plug-in, and I plugged it in and we cut the rhythm guitar, and then I did it. I did that, as a harmonic part, and again on the DI'd acoustic, and then we cut the rest of the band around it, and then I went back in and re-recorded it all nicely mic'd up with a beautiful expensive acoustic guitar, and I sent the rough mix off to Andrew Frampton, and he went, "What happened to the song?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" Because something's not quite there. It doesn't groove like it used to. Did you recut those acoustics? So I was like, yeah, of course. I recorded them quote unquote properly. Yeah. So what do you mean? I was like, well, I mic'd up a really nice acoustic and replayed it. And he's like, no. He goes, the essence and the excitement and everything in that song came from your live, as we were writing the song, performance of it. Oh. So I went back to those original DI'd acoustic guitars, and that's what you hear on the record.
Wow, that's so cool. And I also think that is very sort of liberating. This is cool for people to hear that they are allowed to use that, even if it's like technically less than ideal, right? Yeah. So, I mean, there's been records where phone recordings ended up being on the record just because, that was for whatever reason the magic of the moment. So
the best one I think we've ever done, it was I did a song with a guy called Chris Allen who had won American Idol. And he wrote it with one of the songwriters in the Fray, and Joe King. And Joe when he had done the demo, he was in an airport lounge, and he did the harmonies by singing into his laptop like this, pair of headphones on, and he just went ah. So when we came to recut the background vocals, we resung them and they sounded great, but they didn't have this kind of grainy, terrible internal Mac mic, sound. They didn't have this narrow kind of thing, and they also just didn't have that kind of off the cuff performance of sitting in a airport lounge. So we went back and we got the original demo and flew them in, and it was just so much better. So it just is what it is. I think there was one point there it was like flight number 57, in the background. It was just
awesome. That's ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, so cool. Such a cool story. Where do I want to go there? Okay, yeah, this was where I wanted to go. Let's talk about studio scene real quick, because
yes, please.
This is coming up. It's in, I think, 3 weeks from now, right? By the time this episode airs, it's probably 2 weeks or so. It's October 17th to 19th. I think, yeah, it is. And
are we calling it? It's Studio C. It's not Studio Zena. You're doing
it's Studio. Yeah, it's Studio Szene is the German word. Studio Szene.
Yeah, Studio Szene.
Yeah, Studio Szene. Exactly. It's in Hamburg, Germany, and you're going to be there. We're going to be there as well with our whole team. And so Warren is going to do what you're going to do. You're going to do a masterclass there about how to improve your recording skills. So this is going to be awesome. It's happening on Tuesday, I think, the first day of the event. And then you're also going to be doing a panel with Jason Joshua, which I'm looking forward to a lot, because this is something, I mean, I don't know. Just the combination of the two of you. I've watched the interview that you did with him on your channel, which was super interesting, and I just can't wait to hear you guys talk shop there.
He's
talking
amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, he exemplifies. I just did a talk to some students here at Purdue University, and one of the things that I touched upon was, incorporate other genres. And the thing about Jason is he grew up like hip hop, R&B, and rock all mixed together. And so even though he does a lot of R&B pop music,
I was surprised to hear that when I saw this interview. I was surprised.
He knows
to hear
rock.
That.
He knows rock. He knows, he knows rock. He knows it really, really well. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fascinating to see to hear him talk about that stuff. So yeah, and you're going to talk about the future of AI in music production. So I'm looking forward to that too, because this is. I don't personally, do too much research on that right now. I just, I know that a lot of people are very interested in this topic, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. I'm not against or for it or whatever. I don't have a clear opinion. I just embrace it as just another tool. But I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it and what you talk there, because I know it's like it's top of mind for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, it's. I actually got asked about it today. One of the kids in the talk said, "What do I think of AI?" And I just went back to when Alan Blumlein invented stereo in the 1920s, and everybody thought he was crazy. And then I talked about how classical musicians didn't like to be recorded, and that there wasn't a lot of classical music at first that was available on anywhere, because they thought every performance was supposed to be a live performance, and there was a lot of pushback about not being recorded. It took a long time for them to sort of catch up to the sort of big band and jazz and everything else that was getting recorded. And there was a very famous, it's in my Abbey Road documentary that I did a couple of weeks ago, and I'm blanking on the piano player's name. I'm sure he was German, and it was Beethoven. I'm pretty swear he was a Deutsche piano player, but he talked about how he thought that recording was the devil, because to him, a live performance can have a mistake in it, but it should not be replicated and heard ever again. It should only come out as one thing. So all of this is just to point to the fact that everything, even the most remedial thing like the invention of stereo, 2 channels, to classical music being recorded, has always been seen to be the worst thing that could ever happen to music.
Yeah.
So I think with AI, sure, there's going to be music that relies entirely on AI, and no matter what you do, it will sound like music that relies entirely on AI. What what it has the possibility of being is being another tool for a really talented person to create something that's unique, just like every other tool that's ever come out has been.
Yeah, totally. You still need taste. Even you got to know if what the AI creates is actually good or not, and if you like it, if it speaks to you. So totally, I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be awesome. And what is your masterclass going to be about? Is there? I mean, it's called How to Improve Your Recording Skills. That's what my schedule here says. But what are you going to do there? Can you talk about that? Or I mean, people should just go there and buy their tickets and like watch the masterclass, of course.
Oh yeah, but it's going to be a lot of fun. My wife and I are huge fans of Germany, of Deutschland. Like, we always have the best time there, both of us. Like I said, when we've been there 100 times, both individually and together. But it's such a wonderful place. And to be in Hamburg, which is as we know, is a beautiful city with tons and tons of history. I am going to have an absolute blast there, being able to talk about every single technique I've ever learned about recording. One of the biggest deals for me is the fact that I sought out, as an engineer, the producers that I admired as a kid and made sure that I A, interviewed and B, worked with them. So I've got, Shelley Yakus and Jay Messina and, of course, the great Jack Douglas's information mixed in with, like, everybody you can think of. And, all the interviews. So I got a lot of acquired knowledge. That's the thing about the book that I did with Jerry Hammock. The book is a ton of acquired knowledge. And we're doing another one. We have a mastering book coming out soon, and we have a mixing book coming out soon. Oh, yeah, specialist kind of books.
But the current one has just come out this year, hasn't it? Like
it has.
Earlier this year.
I think, next year we'll have something specialized on mastering, followed by a book specializing on mixing. It's called Home Studio Recording, but it's the ultimate guide. Yeah.
So it's the ultimate home studio recording and mixing guide. Yeah, home studio recording. The link to that is homestudiorecording.com, and it will be in the show notes of this podcast and in the description of the YouTube video, so you can check it out and get your copy there. And I was actually about to ask you, Warren, why, after all the video courses that you've done and the YouTube channel and all the material that you've already put out there in the world, what made you want to write a book instead of doing more of the video stuff?
Well, I think the book is a natural extension. What's interesting is and we have to remember is that everybody consumes information in different ways.
True.
I still, given the opportunity, if I ever get a slow day, which will never happen, I've never had a slow day in my life, but if I had a slow day, I would get a book, newspaper, and a cup of tea, and or coffee, but typically a cup of tea. My ideal day off would be that, playing some guitar, reading a newspaper, reading a book. It's still something I grew up with as a little kid that I love, and there's lots of people. I'm a Gen Xer. I don't know how old you are. Probably millennial, but
35.
Yeah, so you're a millennial. I'm a Gen Xer. And then of course you've got the generation above both of us, the boomers and stuff like that, who love books. And so to me, it's like I've got a message. I'm trying to help people, and I don't want it to just be the one way that it's done. I want to speak to a lot of different people, and a lot of people love having the book as a reference manual. We've sold thousands of the books based on that. That people want a reference manual.
Yeah.
So very, very blessed. Very blessed.
Awesome. This is great. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I don't have it yet, to be honest. Although I love books. Yeah, I don't know why actually. I don't know. I love books, but I need to get this one as well. And can't wait to dive into this because actually that's how I learned in the beginning. Although there was still, as I said, I'm not too old, but there was YouTube already, or it just started when I learned. But I still enjoyed learning with books. I had a stack of books on my first studio desk all the time, and I did exactly what you said. I had a reference manual. I was looking up certain things while I was working and trying to implement that, and I just loved something physical next to me that I could just open up and look into when I needed it. So. Yeah.
Sorry for noodling. This is what happened, you see. I got the guitar. I talked about how I should be practicing, and then I start noodling, so I'm going to give it back to Eric.
It's all good. It's all good.
Lots of people are like, why is he noodling while Benedikt's talking?
All good. So this book, are the other ones already written then? When do you say they come out, or are you working on those right now?
Yeah, I mean, they're in the process, yeah.
Okay. Exciting. And is there anything new that is like exclusive to these books, or is it just a different format but based on the stuff that you also teach in your courses?
I mean, it's kind of a bit of both, because one of the blessings is that I've interviewed and talked to so many of the greatest mixers in the world, greatest mastering engineers.
Yeah.
So, it's accumulated knowledge. And I think in our business, that is the biggest thing you can do, is you can just have a lot of acquired knowledge. It's just get in there and learn. You're talking about taste, listen to tons of different music, all kinds of genres. That's what it's all about. Yeah, it's really all about that. Give me some more questions. I'm dying to hear some more stuff.
Yes, we do that. So, first of all, again, people go to the Studio Scene event, get your tickets there. This link is also going to be in the show notes, because Warren's masterclass is going to be exciting, and the other people, the whole lineup is pretty crazy. So you definitely want to be there. There's Jason Joshua, there's Jill Zimmerman, there's Warren Huart, there's a ton of really great producers in all the audio companies showing their gear. So you definitely want to be there. Get your tickets. And,
it's really, for people listening, we really want this to be a success, because one of my fears is that these kinds of events, they're disappearing. Music Messe, is it even going anymore? Is it gone?
No, yeah, it's gone. Yeah, it's gone.
So when I was a kid, there was a thing called the British Music Fair, and it was amazing. So there was a British Music Fair. That disappeared 10 or 20 years ago. Now Music Mess is going, and it's just like, I don't want it to just be NAMM. That's fine. That's great. But Europe needs a place where people can come and talk about what we do. And there's nothing better than interacting with other real human beings. And so let's all go there. I think the tickets are super cheap, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. It's the link's going to be in the show notes. There's different tiers, so it's hard to give people like a price, because you can go 1 day, 3 day without masterclasses. But even the full package for 3 days with masterclasses is really affordable for what you get there. And it includes like even catering, and like, there's food, there's drinks, there's like the masterclasses, there's all of this. So it's really, really good what they set up there. I can't wait. This is going to be awesome.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, the masterclass for me is going to be, we just did 2 days of masterclasses here at Sweetwater, and one of the things is to get to know the people that come and get to know what they want to know. I've been blessed to A&R at labels, manage bands, be an engineer, engineer some big records, produce some big records, mix some big stuff, master, play guitar, write songs, run educational businesses, everything, you name it. And so for me, it's like I love it all. I have such great friends all across the industry in all ways, shapes or forms. So I like to get into these masterclasses and get to know the people there and find out what they want to know. So if you come to the masterclasses, just come there armed with questions that you want to know. And I will say, what do you want to know? What's going on? To me, so when it's like, what are we going to teach? Well, we can morph in different directions based on it. I think there's always that typical drum recording thing that's always interesting to learn. We did quite a lot of the drum recording thing here. That's good. We did 2 different drum recording courses while we were here. Just finished one last night with Michael Rango, who's my old engineer, actually, who works actually here at Sweetwater. So that was fun. But that can be a bit baptism of fire, because the thing that has the most amount of mics, typically, the most amount of need for compression, EQ, etc. So thank you. That's a big one. But at the same time, vocal recording, of course, is the other thing that's absolutely massive, I think, for most people. And there's a lot to vocal recording beyond compression and EQ and mic pre's and microphone selection. There's a lot of psychology that goes into it that isn't really talked about. Actually, it's never talked about. And it's mainly because, like a lot of people that are teaching this stuff haven't actually got in and recorded vocals. I've been blessed to record vocals on songs that we all hear on the radio and have heard, and there's a lot of psychology that goes into it, and a lot of non-psychology, a lot of just kind of letting it work and breathe. And as Dave Jordan, as I quote him all the time, one of the wisest things, he said quite a few wise things to me, but one of the wisest things he ever said to me was like, sometimes you have to get into a song and rewrite it and re-record it and change the tempo and the key and the lyric and the genre even, and other times you just have to get out of the way of the artist and help them make a great recording. So the skill set comes to when you get in there and do a lot of work, and when you do a minimal amount, and when you do none at all. And it's just, you really need to immerse yourself in a process and learn lots of different techniques and then know when to apply them, rather than one of the difficulties and what I see more than anything else, and I've really started to think about this and talk about this in the last few days immensely, is when you learn a skill set and then you try to apply it to everybody. And I see so much of that. So I just realized that that's what's happening, because people will come to me and go, I saw blah, blah, blah's video and he said you have to do it like this. I'm like, yeah, that might be the one thing that he just learned and he's trying to teach now. But no, you can learn, I don't typically grid drums, but there's been songs where I've gridded drums. It's worked fantastically.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to do like a late 70s, early 80s synth pop song that had a drum machine going, I'm going to kind of like probably tighten that up a lot more than something which is, a swinging groove 6/8 that has 3 different tempo changes in it. I'm going to probably let it kind of breathe and do whatever. The point is like, it's knowing all of those things, because yes, once after about 20 minutes, you can figure out how to use the beat detective tool in Pro Tools or whatever it is, and you can do it. But that doesn't work in so many other instances. It doesn't mean that it's not valid. Of course, it's a valid technique to know. But then you also have to learn and develop a really good ear where you can hear where things push and pull, and that they work really great like that. I was saying in the class earlier that we were teaching earlier that this morning at breakfast we heard a newish Counting Crows song, and it was really good, except you could tell it was like super, super tight, and it came to this pre-chorus section and it felt like the tempo needed to slow down so that Adam's vocal could just kind of sit in there and a bit more beautifully and just kind of bleed. And if you go back to Recovering Satellites record, that was done on tape, and it had so much. There's a song called I'm Not Sleeping Anymore. I don't know if you know that song. It's I'm not sleeping anymore. And then it goes to this bridge where it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all good children go to heaven. It's like it's got this Beatles song part and this huge crescendo, and then it slows back down again. And that's what it needed. Maybe not as dramatic as that, but it needed those old ideas that they were doing applied to this new song that Adam had written. And I was just kind of disappointed, and I don't know who had produced it or whatever, but my point is like, I'm sure, it's just one song, but I'm sure the rest of the record was amazing, who knows. But my point is like, that's when a good producer would step in and go, you know what? This is working for 90% of the song. Verse sounds great with that groove, chorus is great, but that pre-chorus needs to slow down so that the vocal breathes better, so the impact of the chorus when it comes in is greater. And so that's where somebody with more than one way of working would have done a really great job. Somebody that has experience in freeform kind of rubato. I don't know if people know classical terms, but rubato, Beethoven is obviously the perfect example of rubato. That's one of the blessings, I think, probably of having a father that I had that was a classical buff and a jazz fanatic. Growing up listening to Beethoven, all of that rubato is just, I'm not sure how much of a classical fan you or your listeners are or watchers are.
I am, for sure.
Yeah. Well, you know who Alfred Brendel is then, he is like you listen to Brendel playing Beethoven, he has the meter, the tempo is all over the place, but you never ever doubt what he's doing is best for the music.
Question it.
Yeah, never question it. So, I'm not saying, I don't want to come across like a snob, because I am not a snob at all. Yeah. I can't stand people that wag their finger and tell kids off, because ultimately, the best music and the freshest music is made by people that are getting into it for the first time. Everybody we admire was at their creative peak when they were in their 20s. And I'm not to say they didn't come back and continue making great music in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. I mean, of course, there's many people that continue to make great music as they get older, but that kicking down the doors kind of thing is a big part of it. I love two-tone and ska. I love punk and post-punk just as much as I love listening to Wes Montgomery and Charlie Christian and Django Reinhardt, the 3 guitar players that I grew up on, and Joe Pass, of course. Joe Pass with Ella Fitzgerald. I was talking about that earlier. Some of the greatest music ever made. Just Joe backing Ella Fitzgerald live. It's like brings you to tears how beautiful it is. So I can listen to that, but I can also listen to, London's Burning or London's, by the Clash at the same time as listening to Damn Neat Neat Neat, at the same time as listening to Bohemian Rhapsody, which is my favorite song ever, or Hey Jude, or some dance, Massive Attack. I love Portishead first record. That stuff is all on the same level to me. Tutu,
awesome.
Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. It's Marvin Gaye, what's going on? It's all to me as relevant. Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie Wonder, anything Bob Marley. It's that
was a wild mix. There was a wild mix there, but you're right.
Yeah,
you're
but
so right.
That was always one of the things I admired about when we would play. So I'd play when I was playing club band stuff. We used to get on a ferry in Ramsgate and then go and land in France and then drive through and then go and play in Germany. We'd play the American air bases. You remember those days?
Yep.
Those big American air bases. We'd play American air bases and then club nights in between the air base things, all the way through Hamburg and Munich and all of that stuff. And even got to play in East Germany and Dresden, and all this stuff and play all these shows. And it was amazing because we were playing like funk stuff, and our audience was like, guys were like denim jackets and Iron Maiden and Saxon patches on, dancing to us. And then we realized that German audience were incredibly eclectic and they loved all genres. And I always loved that. And I think that that's a big thing, is like, love all music. There's only, as Duke Ellington said, there's only two types of music, good and bad.
Yeah, totally. I had to learn that, honestly, though, because I used to be, as probably most people, I used to be elitist when I was younger, when I was like only into punk, only into metal, only into this or that. And I liked other stuff, but I didn't admit it. And then I had to learn to like embrace it and admit it to myself first, and then be able to say it openly. And now I enjoy all kinds of things, just like you said, but it took a while.
But that's honestly okay. That's okay. It's okay to be that person. And I think it's a big part of your journey is to be kind of a musical snob and come out the other side. I mean, when I was seriously into jazz, I went to see Miles Davis as a kid. I went to see Miles Davis play just before he died at Hammersmith Odeon, and it was one of the greatest shows I've ever seen in my entire life.
Wow.
And so I was just like, I didn't want to know anything but jazz. Wasn't interested. And I'd already been through my punk rock phase. I'd been through my metal phase. And, Queen was still my favorite band at that point. But once I got to see Miles Davis live, I mean, for probably 6 months, I didn't listen to anything except for Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Ornette Coleman, Charlie Parker. That was it. It was bebop and what came after bebop, and that was it. And as far as I was concerned, that was the only music. And I'm glad that I went through that snobby phase, because I went out and collected loads of albums. I immersed myself in it. And then, of course, like anything, you kind of, there's a gateway drug. You're listening to Bitches Brew or something like that, and you're hearing John McLaughlin playing with David Holland, and then suddenly you go off on a little bit of a Birds of Fire, Mahavishnu orchestra kind of thing, and then you see all the crossover of those musicians, so you start getting, oh, well, who else did they play with? And then before you know it, you're putting it all together. And then, and then I'm back into Jeff Beck, and I'm suddenly listening to Blow by Blow again, which I'd listened to a few years before, and then it gets a bit more funky, and then I start obsessing about funk rock guitar playing, and then rock guitar playing, jazz rock guitar playing. And the point is like, it's good to be obsessive about stuff, because it shows you're passionate, and you will end up going in different directions. So,
Totally. What I love about this is when conversations like that are so not technical, but about the music and about like the things we're passionate about. These are the best conversations. I almost don't want to listen to podcasts about audio anymore, where it's just like compressor settings and this frequency of that. Well, I love conversations like that, so I appreciate you for saying all of that. Really.
Well, I just interviewed Paul over at Spitfire Audio, and I asked him about theory, because I know it's really, really popular to do videos on YouTube about theory, and it's definitely very elitist, because it's basically like, I understand and you don't, Sonny. It's interesting, because they'll break down songs and say what the composer or the writer was doing, and yet most of the guys and girls that were writing those songs had no idea what they were doing. Yeah. So it was like somebody wrote a response to what Paul was saying from Spitfire Audio, saying, well, you have to know all of your theory, and you have to understand it all, in order to be able to do all of that, which I really don't agree with, but I don't disagree that it's good to know theory. I understand theory. I can read and write music. I totally understand that, but I don't necessarily think it made me a better songwriter. Paul McCartney once famously said he doesn't know what a 1-4-5 is, but he knows what G, C, and D is. So he knows that G, C, and D is the foundation of all rock and roll, those three chords. And then he knows that bridges usually are a 6-chord and a 2-chord, the minor 6 and the minor 2. But he didn't know that that's what they were called. He just heard songs like that and then wrote songs based off of that. And he did strange things like put the wrong chord into stuff because it sounded good, not because it was a, blah, 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 parallel minor, flattened fifth, digi, blah, 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 blah. And so this person, came up with a very, very structured and very honest response. Well, it's good to know all the theory and have it as a basis and have it be au fait with it, be so familiar with it. And I said, that's very, very true. But do you ever? There's scholars who make a very big point about the fact that in their peak, Mozart and Beethoven had a fraction of the musical theory knowledge that we now, since the days of jazz and everything, that your average music school student does. So a guy girl goes off and does 3 or 4 years in a university and comes out with 100 times more knowledge on theory than those great composers had.
Yeah.
Who wrote the best music? I just wonder. Who's writing the better music?
Good question.
Has anybody written Beethoven's 5th or 9th Symphony, anything of that kind of level since then? Now with this 100 times more knowledge and everything being at your fingertips, I feel like I love music education. I'm a big part of music education. I love it.
Obviously, yeah.
So, but I don't want anybody to think that us teaching music education is the only way to do it. My job at the end of the day is just to encourage people. It's the same job I have as a producer, is to find what's good about what you do and do more of that. People ask, 3 of the questions were related to vocal performances, musicians' performances, how to get musicians to interact better and get them to acknowledge each other. And I'm like, that's our job. Our job is to go, they just sang a vocal. I've said this many times for the people that have heard this before, but somebody sings down a vocal so you can hear for the first time. And let's just say it's absolute garbage, except for the second verse where there's one line where they did some kind of breath through the word or some twist on it. And it's absolutely amazing. But it's the only good part of the song. What do you talk about? You don't go, oh, that was total garbage. You go, oh my God, Fred, Linda, whatever the person's singer's name. Listen to this. And you play that little piece back and say, see how amazing that was? Give me more of that. That's how you produce a vocalist.
That's the way, totally.
So instead of being like, well, the Phrygian, Lydian, blah, 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 it's like, it doesn't help. It doesn't help. It's a good way of saying I understand better than you do. Yeah. But I think but let's get in there and say, okay, this is what it analyzes at. But how do you get to that point? Well, you get to that point is by trying out ideas, not in a learned way, but by sitting there and playing maybe a guitar part, you're coming in and just going, thinking of the melody, where does it take me? Often it takes me to a place where the minor chord suddenly becomes a major. I mean, a three major dominant is really nice, but I don't, off the top of my head, know what that movement's called when you change it. There's probably some really super clever name for changing in A, the C sharp minor 7 to a C dominant 7. I don't know what it is, but I know that it leads really nicely into the 4 chord, the D. I just know from experience that it does. And if I want the chorus to now modulate to a D, that's a great way of leading it in to now change the key of the chorus. These are things that I have learned by accident and probably theory-wise could have taught me. But they're so much more of a revelation when you're just out there doing it. I think the biggest thing is encourage the creativity. Don't make it about the learning. Make it about I just want people to be making music. And if it means that, going back to your earlier question, it's a combination of using AI or whatever gets them going, whatever it is, whether it's just a drum loop that's loaded into Logic already and they're writing over it. I mean, the argument would be like, you have to use a real drummer. It's like, we can always take everything back and make it seem like there's cheating. Well, everything is cheating. Everything we've done has been done by somebody else. It's just the new thing is like how you twist it and incorporate other ideas towards it. So, yeah, enthusiasm and encouragement is the most important thing for me.
Yeah, you can you can tell by listening to you talk about this. So no, this is incredible hearing you speak about this.
So hit me up with the last couple of questions before I eat something.
Awesome, perfect. Thank you. You're very kind. Thank you for doing this. So. This is from our coaching community. These are all like people who are in our people that we teach on our platform, and they are very excited that we got you here. So Wayne is the first person. He asks, can you recall your most difficult session, one that felt like a real struggle but actually came out pretty good in the end? Yeah,
I think there's so many of those, to be honest, because when we did You Found Me, which was the first single off of the second album for the Fray, which is their second biggest song after How to Save a Life. So it was a massive success in that respect. The chorus was like written and rewritten multiple times. The drum part was written and rewritten multiple times, and was, you always have these fond ideas that a song is like, you hear stories of like yesterday. We all know the story of Paul McCartney waking up in the morning and going da 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 da, and he had this melody, and then he sat at the piano, and it was called Scrambled Eggs. I'm forever making scrambled eggs. And so he doesn't have a lyric, but he has a melody, and he dreams it. So apparently he runs around singing this song to people, saying, is this somebody else's song? Have I stolen it from somebody? And so you get this kind of rose-tinted spectacle idea that a great song just comes out of the air. Yeah. And yet you Found Me is their second biggest song. It's probably, I think it's at 1 billion streams. I think most of the big songs are at 1 billion streams. And so you've got a 1 billion stream song, especially as a song that came out before streaming. So it's a 1 billion stream song, and it went through a lot of incarnations. It wasn't finished till it was the first song that they came with because of the first line, I found God on the corner of First and Amistad. So that existed, but nothing else existed. So it had a verse idea, and the chorus kept getting written and rewritten. We had to change the drum part. I tell this story a lot, because there's a thing called a drum dial, which you put on the head and you mark it off. We were able to move studios and recut the drums and still have almost the same drum sound because of the drum tuning. The ambience changes from room to room, but it's pretty minimal compared with the sound of the close mics and the drums. So that's a big deal. So I always talk about that. But that's a good prime example of a song that was started. It was the first strong song that they had, and the last song we finished recording. And I think it was 9 months, that making of that record. But it paid off. So
I'm paid off. Yeah.
So what might have been considered a difficult song to do, by all intents and purposes, ended up being one of their biggest songs ever.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Great answer. Great story. So next question is from Chris. Chris says, what tricks do you use to calm some nervous client down and get him or her into the right mood for recording?
Just keep it lighthearted. Don't take the session too seriously. One of the things that Jack Douglas kind of definitely taught me was to do that. He would do these things where he does these things where he'll take like a pita bread, and put it on his face and cut out the eyes and the thing and just kind of walk around. He just does all kinds of stupid, silly stuff. It's just hilarious.
I've never heard that. That's insane.
He just keeps it really lighthearted.
Yeah.
I think that read a room. That's the producer's job, is to read the room. If everybody's really uptight and pissed off and all this kind of stuff, just change the environment. Sometimes it's let's get out and go and walk down the street and get a Starbucks coffee or something like that. Yeah. I don't think it's always that. I'm careful with that because I work with a particular songwriter, and we did a bunch of records together. And his solution was always to do that. And after a while, it gets exhausting, because if you're engineering and producing, you've got an artist that's always goofing off. And so that isn't always my solution to change the environment. I do think work begets work, and I think that sometimes you just have to work through it, but you just need to change the environment, or at least the feeling in the room. But we're in digital, so we can just kind of close down the session, open up a different song, and within 30 seconds you're working on something different. So that's the other thing as well. Just kind of like go, don't make a big deal out of it. Just go, oh wow, that guitar part you did, that reminds me of this song we haven't finished. We need to do the guitar. Make it light. Go, boom, and suddenly you're in a different zone and you're doing something else. Awesome. But it's tough. There have been records. So I think one record, Eric knows exactly what record it was. That was an absolute nightmare with vocals. And it doesn't matter what we did, how we recorded it, how we comped it. The singer was never going to be happy. And that's just because there's lots of reasons why. But you just have to sometimes you just have to do your best work and do everything you love, and the artist will never be happy with it. I think one of those examples is like we recently interviewed, not recently, but we interviewed John Leckie a little while ago, and talked about, and Steve Lillywhite. And Steve Lillywhite talked about, working with some of the most important records of all time. And one of those is the Lars. You remember that song, There She Goes? He didn't actually produce that one, but he produced most of the rest of the album. And he talked about making that record. And that is one of the most important records of the last 40 years, and influenced so many of those Manchester bands. All look to that record. And yet the singer hates the record and uses it as a reason why he has never done anything ever again. Because it just wasn't that record that he wanted to make. And that's fine. And but then it's, you just point to it and you go, it's one of the most important records ever made. It influenced a whole scene of bands that came after it that absolutely love that album. That wasn't a record I made, obviously. That's one that Steve Lillywhite made. But it's an interesting thing that, it's not going to happen very often. But every now and then, one out of every 110, whatever it might be, albums, you just might have to deal with the fact that you're going to work as hard as you like. You're just going to have to deal with the fact that the artist might not be that happy. Oh, it's just... Okay. You can do everything you possibly can, but as what's the Churchill quote? You can please some of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all the time.
Yep, totally. Thank you. Awesome. We got two more, and then we're done. If that's fine.
Okay.
So awesome, perfect. So thank you. Torsten asks. This is a really interesting question, actually. He says, how can something new be created in modern music in terms of songs or sounds if all artists and engineers always have access to this huge collection of references from the past that they use as a basis? Example, he says, could something be like overdriven guitar, could something like that be invented still today? Something like that's never been done before? Has everything been done? Because everybody always draws from past references and experiences. Yeah,
that's interesting. I mean, I remember about 15 years ago, I can't remember what the Brooklyn band was, but they took a heavy guitars and a really pretty vocal and put the two things together. And one of the interesting thing was about the guitars is it was digitally clipped, so it was really bad, but you got this kind of clipped, horrible, ugly guitar sound, but then this kind of pretty girl singer over the top, and it was pretty awesome. I'm trying to remember the name of the band. They were a Brooklyn band. But anyway, my point is it sounded fresh, it sounded different, it sounded unusual. I think there's tons of opportunity to create new stuff. It's just, that's the bit that I want to encourage, is the creativity, as opposed to the, kind of the right way or the wrong way to do it kind of discussion, which really annoys the schnizzle out of me when people start saying, well, this is the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it.
You're so right. All right. Thank you. Awesome. So that's encouraging. And then final question again from Wayne is, have there been any points in your career where you've suffered from imposter syndrome?
All the time. The second Fray record went to #1. And it was the #1 album in America. It sold 187,000 in its first week. And I remember just thinking, I have no idea what I'm doing, even though I spent 9 months on it. And it was a lot of work for me, that album. It was a lot of work. And so it was a weird one to sort of to have a #1 album, but then just think I wasn't good enough to have a #1 album. And I remember talking to my friend Brian Colstrom, who unfortunately died a few years ago. He was part of that OxyContin epidemic, which was really sad. But he told me that when Dirt became like, Alice in Chains' Dirt became like this seminal record that everybody was name checking at the time of being like such an important album, and he had poured his heart and soul into that album, and he just thought that he was a fraud. He thought he was an imposter. And so that made me feel better, because I thought to myself, well, if, because the Fray second Fray album's a great album. I'm really proud of it. I'd love to remix it, but that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
But I think that it's a wonderful, wonderful album. But Dirt by Alice in Chains is not just a wonderful album. It's an important album that changed the music industry at the time. So if somebody who made that record is having doubts, then it's okay for the rest of us to have doubts.
All right. Thank you so much, Warren.
Thank you, Benedikt. It's been a lot of fun.
Totally. I really enjoyed this.
Come and see me at Studio Zena.
Yes, we'll be in touch there, definitely. We're going to do a follow-up episode, actually, there. We got a slot at the podcast sofa there,
Great.
So we're going to do one. Can't wait to hang out. And people, get your tickets. Go there, please. Get Warren's book. By the way, I just ordered it while we were talking here, so I got the hardcover.
Please buy the book. Buy the book.
I just got the hardcover, so get one too. And yeah. Let's hang out at Studio Scene. Thank you so much again for your time, Warren. Is there anything else we need to tell people? Like, where should we send them? Is the book the thing right now? Should we?
Yeah, I mean if you're
all
not
of it
already
will be in the show notes, but yeah.
Yeah, Produce Like a Pro. Go to the YouTube channel, but obviously go to the website producelikeapro.com. Kisaina's Pro Mix Academy. If you're into metal, one of my business partners, of course, is Caillat, Christian Caillat.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's awesome. So check out the Caillat Audio Cult as well. And we'll all see you at Studio Zena.
Awesome. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you.
Have a great day, Warren. Bye-bye. Thank you. And
Thanks a lot.
Talk soon.
Thanks. Talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.